Hi guys, welcome to Amateur Chemistry. So recently my channel hit 50,000 subscribers and to this day I can't really believe I got this far. I mean, amassing so many wonderful people on a channel originally meant to be a tiny side project is a feeling really difficult to describe, and I would like to dearly thank each and every one of you for making my 2 years on YouTube such an amazing time. Now, much like when I hit 10,000 subscribers a little over a year ago, I decided to celebrate this milestone with a special one-of-a-kind video. For this one, I came up with something quite fitting for an amateur chemistry channel, and that is making, or rather synthesizing, some spaghetti bolognese. Apart from showing off my cooking skills, most of which are based on preparing this single dish, I do this because I recently ordered a bunch of new equipment for future projects and I figured I might as well test it by using it to cook something. Now, before doing insane things like short path vacuum distillation of tomato sauce, I decided to first cook my spaghetti the classic way so that we later have some reference on how the process should look like versus how the synthesis will go. Also, to all the culinary oriented people out there, the dish I will be making will by no means be the textbook definition of spaghetti bolognese, but my heavily modified take on it I will refer to just as my spaghetti, and even though this is wrong on many levels, I don't really care since all I want is some good food to eat. If you're like me and want to enjoy some amateur spaghetti, I will include the complete recipe in the description, and now with this legal disclaimer out of the way, let's cook. For the first batch, I will use my lesser lab, aka the kitchen, which was a pain to clean so that it looks good on camera, and to start making the official amateur chemistry dish, I need to assemble the ingredient squad. As you can see, there's quite a bit of stuff that goes into my spaghetti. Fortunately, most of it can be found in a regular grocery store and divides into 3 main parts, which are the pasta, the meat and the sauce. Each one is equally important for the full spag experience, however many ingredients and their amounts can be readily adjusted. For example, I use some high-fat pork shoulder as my meat, but beef also works nice. Speaking of meat, it's the part I always like to tackle first, and after getting it out of the fridge, I wash it and cut it up into these slim pieces I don't have to grind. For that, I use this mighty electrical grinder, which after a few minutes turns all the meat into this pasty abomination known as ground pork. If it passes my picky cuts taste test, I can start flavoring it, and since I always use the fancier spices for the sauce, a generous amount of sea salt and freshly ground black pepper is more than enough. When all these spices are added, I then turn the meat into this cursed bowl I then leave to sit for about half an hour, and I don't really know why I do that, but it's what all those fancy YouTube cooks do, so I guess it has to do something. When my meat is doing its thing, I can prepare the pan I am going to fry it in, and since I use that same pan for the sauce later, it has to be real big. This weird hybrid of a pot with a pan always does the job well, and to give the fried meat a better flavor, I always like to first throw in some diced onion along with olive oil and heat this mixture for a few minutes. When the onions start to brown, I drop in the giant meatball and aggressively decapitate it using a spatula. I then leave it to slowly cook, and in the meantime I prepare the pasta. Now, the type of pasta I use for my spaghetti is, well, spaghetti, which is a fact I and many people choose to consciously ignore and instead give this name to the finished dish. Anyway, preparing it is beyond easy, and all I do is fill up a pot with some water, salt it, bring it to a boil, and then toss in an arbitrary amount of pasta, which as always is probably too much. The goal here is to cook it just enough so that it doesn't get too soft, which in Italian is called al dente, and when my sixth sense decides it's time, I strain it all through a kitchen strainer. Around the same time, the meat finishes cooking, and now it's time to make the last ingredient, which is the sauce. This part of the spaghetti adventure is by far the most important flavor-wise. Its base consists of a good amount of canned, peeled tomatoes, along with some vegetables that often vary, and for this batch all I could find was some carrot, garlic and small tomatoes. By far the most important ingredient are the canned tomatoes, and I was fortunately able to buy some of the good stuff. Now to make the sauce I have to blend everything together into a sort of vegan smoothie, and to start I got this tall mixing bowl and threw in all the vegetables. I then emptied all the tomato cans into it, and for my not so secret spice blend I used a good amount of chili powder along with some oregano and basil for the optimal Italian experience. I then got my blender and beat the hell out of the sauce with it until it looked nice and homogeneous. I now have to combine it with the meat, which I did in a single satisfying splash. After thoroughly mixing everything, I left the sauce to simmer on low heat to boil out some of the water and concentrate it, which is professionally called reducing it. Over the course of about an hour, the sauce slowly approached the right consistency, and when it was nearly done, it was time to add the cheese. You see, after making this dish so many times, I came to the conclusion that adding some cheese at this stage is absolutely necessary, and I actually like to add 2 cheeses, both of which can be conveniently sourced from my homegrown Polish cheese tree. The first cheese acts as the filler, and there has to be a lot of it, for which this nice Gouda fits perfectly. Now the second one should be the fanciest you can get. It serves to add this cool aftertaste, and truffle cheese does this job wonderfully. Just a few minutes after adding the cheeses onto the boiling sauce they melt, and I can easily mix everything together. Now the sauce is finally ready, and I can begin assembling my spaghetti. The first thing I do is put the pasta into some bowls and then get a generous amount of sauce into it. I then grate a little bit more cheese on top, since you can't really have too much cheese, and just like this my magnum opus of a dish is finished. This spaghetti turned out just amazing, and cooking it for a family dinner is a real cool thing. Anyway, now that we know how making it normally looks like, it's time to step everything up a notch. As I already said, I recently ordered a bunch of new and specialized glassware for some future projects, like this beautiful short puff vacuum distillation head, and I've decided to put it to the ultimate test of making my spaghetti. Now, as an actual disclaimer, I have to emphasize that you don't repeat this at home, because even though all this glassware is brand new and thoroughly washed, there is always a risk of some minor chemical contamination, and I make and test this wicked spaghetti at my own risk. Anyway, in terms of ingredients I will use, they are pretty much the same as before, with the meat being part of what I ground at the beginning. I will also use some fresh basil and a synthetic umami flavoring called MSG, which looks and sounds very chemical and will be a nice addition to this synthesis. I figured that this time the pasta is the best thing to start with, since I want to have angering the Italians out of the way as quickly as possible, so if anyone from Italy is watching this, close your eyes, because I have to break my pasta. This is unfortunately necessary, because this way it's much easier to weigh out exactly 150 grams of it, and it will fit much better into my pasta cooking apparatus. It's basically just a big crystallizing dish equipped with magnetic steering and a thermometer on my new gigantic hot plate serving as the stove. To cook my pasta, I poured in 500 ml of distilled water and turned on the heating and steering. I then weighed out precisely 10 grams of pure sodium chloride on my analytical scale and added it into the dish. After a while, it dissolved and the created solution reached 80 degrees Celsius, making it ready to cook some pasta with. It's quite interesting how professional you can make hot salty water sound. Anyway, upon tossing in all the crushed pasta, instead of relying on my senses, I started a 7-minute timer and left this cursed pot to do its thing. When the time was up, I now had to strain the pasta. However, I didn't want to use just a boring metal strainer and instead settled on a vacuum filter. Vacuum filtration of freshly cooked pasta is definitely not an everyday sight in a chemistry lab. This whole process was also surprisingly slow due to small pasta particles clogging the filter, but after a few minutes I managed to remove all the pasta solution and was left with this little pasta mountain. I got it all into a Ziploc bag for storage, and in terms of yield, I managed to make a whopping 340 grams of pure analytical grade cooked pasta, corresponding to a 230% yield from the starting material. Now it's time to fry the ground meat, of which I somehow got exactly 400 grams. To flavor it, apart from a gram of black pepper and 2 grams of sodium chloride, I also used 300 mg of chili powder, and after mixing it all up, it was time to assemble the frying apparatus. Similar to before, I wanted it to be somewhat original, so I came up with this magnificent creation. As you can see, it's basically just a heating mantle with an extra large watch glass on top to act as the pan. To start cooking up some meat, I got a drizzle of olive oil onto the watch glass and dropped in half of my spiced pork. After just a few minutes, it started sizzling, which was an amazing sign. One problem, however, was that I couldn't really move the meat around, but I ended up frying it more like a patty, and after a while, it was all nicely cooked. This whole procedure, apart from spraying my whole fume hood with olive oil, worked surprisingly nice and left me with around 430 grams of fried meat ready to be used to make some spaghetti. Now, the last and in my opinion most interesting part of the synthesis is the sauce, for which I've went and got my biggest beaker. In terms of ingredients, it's similar to before, containing exactly 600 grams of canned tomatoes, along with 200 mg of black pepper, 2 grams of MSG, 10 grams of garlic, 2 fresh basil leaves and 20 grams of onion. To blend everything together, I used the same blender as before, since there isn't much chemistry equipment that can work with sauce like that, and now with this vegetable solution ready, I have to reduce it. Now, in the chemical world, the term reduction almost always means a certain type of reaction involving a chemical called a reducing agent, like this white powder called sodium borohydride. Reducing our sauce with it would not only be hella expensive, but would also make it carcinogenic, so I decided to reserve this important experiment for later, and for the quote-unquote reduction, use distillation. It should allow me to selectively pull water from the sauce, concentrating all the tasty compounds inside it, and to start I got all my sauce into a 1 liter boiling flask and then assembled it into this fancy apparatus. This isn't your average distillation setup, and thanks to this small glass head on top, it not only shortens the way the vapors have to travel, but also allows me to pull a vacuum on the whole system and make water boil at a lower temperature than it normally does. This should make everything go faster and preserve all the fresh tomato flavor, and to finally try it out, I started gently heating the reaction flask. When it got to around 50 degrees Celsius, I turned on my vacuum pump and almost immediately the sauce got really bubbly. This was probably just some dissolved tomato gas. Anyway, after a few more minutes, the water started boiling and the first droplets made it into the distillation head. Some water also started collecting in the receiving flask, and overall, this cursed setup was actually working. After about an hour, quite a bit of water had collected in the receiving flask, and a great deal of it also escaped into my vacuum pump because of insufficient cooling. When I figured that the sauce had been reduced enough, I stopped the distillation and disassembled the apparatus. Apart from some weirdly scented water, I was left with a lot of thick and very fresh smelling tomato sauce. Now, with all the ingredients ready, I can finally make some synthetic spaghetti, and all that's left to do is heat the sauce and meat with some cheese. For that, I could of course use something like a microwave, but since I got a great deal on this old school overhead stirrer, I just couldn't say no to it. I mean, this machine is built like it came straight from the 60s, being very heavy and powerful enough to cut off your fingers on 50% power. It even comes with this nice control panel, which coupled with my big hot plate for heating makes this the perfect setup to dope the sauce with some fine mimolette cheese. When all the cheese dissolved, it was time to carry out the coupling of the finished sauce with my pasta, which I decided to do in 2 vessels, with the stuff in the crystallizing dish intended to be my dinner and the rest in the beaker sacrificed for science. Much like before, I grated some more cheese onto the sauce, and just like that, this whole synthesis is done. It turned out way better than I expected. I mean, the spaghetti was just delicious. Cheers. Man, this is good. And also, to my big surprise, even my cat liked it, which was a nice and well-deserved seal of approval. Now, I wouldn't be myself if I didn't do some weird experiments with my final product, and as the first one, I wanted to actually reduce the sauce. For that, I got some of the aforementioned sodium borohydride onto a sample of my spaghetti, and at first pretty much nothing happened, but after a while the whole thing started bubbling and overall looked pretty weird. Now, what's even more interesting, the sin against humanity turned out to be really flammable, and maybe that's the way the chemistry gods punish me for wanting to know too much. Anyway, I also combined my spaghetti with anhydrous aluminum chloride, which made it emit suspicious amounts of smoke, as well as with some fuming nitric acid, officially making this the first footage of spaghetti nitrate on the internet. Overall, this project was a really nice one, and I really like doing something like this every once in a while. Thank you all very much for watching and getting this channel to almost 60,000 subscribers before I even posted this special. In terms of future videos, I have a lot of cool stuff planned and filmed, and will shortly be returning to posting more frequently. For now, thank you very much again for making this channel what it is today. Also, I would like to dearly thank all my amazing patrons for their generous support, which funds most of my content and motivates me to keep uploading, and see you guys in the next video.